So let's talk about the big case. Oh, I said I'd stop for 5 minutes about now. Are you guys happy for me to just keep going for a little while? We're just stopping and starting so much with tech. I'm very sorry about that. This is kind of a classic example of a case where one of the things we're going to do is work out what the law is by looking at cases that show us what it's not. So Carlill and Carbolic Smokeball is to contract law what the snail in the bottle case is for torts. So this is a case that people, every single contract student ever has worried themselves over. It is not the only case that you need to cite, but it will really help you with a whole lot of principles. Again, I tell you that because when you're stuck, chances are you'll find it in Carbolic Smokeball somewhere, but the people who get really good marks will find better and more recent ways to prove the point than that. Just for your education and edification, this is a copy of or different copies of the advertisements that the Carbolic Smokeball company put in their in newspapers at the time. So imagine today, this is the time of the Spanish flu. So we are now in COVID-19 territory, right? It's just at the beginning. And so imagine today a version of this, the Carbolic Smokeball company is in the newspapers and they are saying, you buy our product, you wash your hands with it as directed, and you breathe in this smoke and lather this stuff on your face that will make you immune to COVID-19. It's effectively what they were doing. And it says it will positively cure, oh, I've got to remember which one I'm on. Positively cure all sorts of things. Cough, throat deafness. I just want my throat deafness cured at some point. It comes with testimonials. It's got lots of information about it. So the defendant in this case, this Carbolic Smokeball company, put advertisements in the newspaper. You've just seen them. It offered to pay 100 quid, £100 to anybody who contracted influenza, the Spanish flu, after buying their product and using it in accordance with the instructions. It said in the advertisement, or one version of them, that £1,000 had been deposited with a bank to show their sincerity, to make sure they guaranteed that funds were available. They were very happy that they were unlikely to have to pay it out. Poor Mrs. Carlill, she used the smoke ball. She did what she was supposed to do in accordance with the instructions, but she got the flu, so she wrote them a letter and said, I'd like my 100 quid, please. So the words on the advertisement in question are important. £100 reward will be paid by the company to any person who contracts the increasing epidemic, wasn't even a pandemic, the increasing epidemic influenza, colds, or any disease caused by taking a cold after having used the ball 3 times a day for 2 weeks, according to the printed directions. £1,000 is deposited with the Alliance Bank, Regent Street, shewing our sincerity in the matter. I think it's important to know that as of yesterday, the £100 was 25,860 something Aussie dollars. Like, let's get this in perspective. So imagine, you know that ad, soldier on, soldier on? You got a cold and you take this and you'll be able to go to work and you'll be fine. Imagine those guys, whoever they are saying, don't worry about this COVID-19 thing, we've got you absolutely covered. If you suck on our lozenge or drink our cough medicine or whatever it happens to be, and you go to work, you will be absolutely fine. You will not contract our COVID-19. And if you do, we'll give you 25 grand towards your medical expenses. Okay, I just want to contextualise it because it's sort of 100 quid. That even today, that'll buy you a nice pair of boots at Marks and Spencer's. There's no doubt about it. But the spending power in today's money, it's a lot of money. So, the issues before the court, some of which won't immediately make sense to you, okay? because you kind of have to understand what the rules are to see why these things were an issue. But one of the reasons this is a seminal case is it deals with so many of them. So one of the things the court had to work out is whether there was any indication by one person to another their willingness to enter into a contract on certain terms without further negotiation. So in other words, was there an offer? Was there an offer that was clear and contained everything? And was it made to somebody, an offeree, who could accept it? And if so, was Mrs. Carlill that offeree? So was this an offer to contract or an advertisement or a mere puff? Now, one of the first things that you need to put out of your mind is how this would be dealt with today. There is no doubt that this is a claim that would be better brought as a misleading or deceptive conduct claim, right? Or a product liability claim. But the law of tort wasn't growing at the same rate as it was today. So Mrs. Carlill's lawyers brought the action in contract. They said she did the things that were required by your offer, and she did them in the right way. And as a consequence, when she got the cold, you owe her $100 or 100 quid in contract. Oh, Citrix, I do not care. Okay, go away. So the defendants, so the Smokeball company, had a number of arguments on foot here. Firstly, they said the advertisement wasn't an offer. It was just a puff. No promise was intended. So they were trying to distinguish conduct that is an offer from what we would call a puff. They said it was a boast. It was never intended to be legally binding. Next, getting into the more nitty-gritty of it, they said even if it was an offer. Now, lawyers often work this way. It's a bit like Year 10 debating. Even if my learned friend in the affirmative is correct, then for these reasons their argument falls flat. So the even if argument here is that even if it was an offer, and we're not admitting that it was, is that Mrs. Carlill didn't accept that offer, or if she did, she didn't communicate her acceptance. Also, she didn't pay any consideration. So we'll talk about the consideration point, but she didn't pay a price for that. And lastly, the advertisement itself was too vague and too uncertain. For example, it didn't set any time limit between the use of the ball and being eligible for the reward. Mrs. Carlill's lawyers argued, on the other hand, that actually it doesn't matter whether or not the Carbolic Smoke Company had any knowledge of Mrs. Carlill in particular or not, because they made an offer to the world that any reader of that newspaper could accept that offer. They also argued that as soon as she did the things that were required, that she had performed her consideration, that she had done her side of the bargain, and ultimately argued that this is a unilateral contract, that the contract for the payment of £100 only comes into effect when the person to whom the offer has been made does all of the things that are required to be done in order for that offer to manifest and become a contract, that they accept by doing the thing. Similarly to the example that we were talking about before with Michael, with a unilateral contract, I am looking for my lost dog, I put up a sign, anybody who sees it can go look for my dog. The minute they turn up with my dog, then I owe them the reward. But while people are out looking for my dog, I don't owe them anything. And in fact, at any point of time during that, I can take down the sign and I can say, oh no, actually, remember I don't particularly like that dog. I don't want a reward. And there's no possibility of any contract ever being made. Yes, I know, no more filming for you. Oh no, that's just telling me it's been an hour.
So does that mean that, for instance, if the signs were up and someone read the sign and then did all the action that was required to complete that agreement.
An offer can be withdrawn at any time, is the short answer to your question, because I want to focus on this case before we run out of too much time. But yeah, an offer can be withdrawn at any time. It needs to be withdrawn in a way that it's reasonable that that withdrawal will be communicated. So if I had made an offer to everybody in this class and I wanted to withdraw that offer, I would need to either say I'd withdrawn it in the same way that I said it here. So my offer earlier of chocolates in exchange for typos in my course notes, if I decide to withdraw that offer at any point in time, I need to communicate that in a way that would be reasonable for my intended audience to get it. I could do that by speaking in the room, which is how I made the offer. I might put it in an announcement that goes to you all. But yeah, I couldn't just decide and not tell anybody. So the Smokeball company, if they'd withdrawn the offer, they would need to have advertised that they had withdrawn it, because that's the way they communicated it. What's next? So, a couple of important concepts that come out of this case. Firstly, you can make an offer to the world. That offer ripens into a contract when somebody comes and does the thing that is required. And so this is the very definition of a unilateral contract, and this case is our authority for the concept that unilateral contracts can exist. And it's useful to us because in exploring what a unilateral contract is, it discusses what a bilateral contract is. The acceptance of a unilateral offer occurs by performing the condition. At the time that Mrs. Carlill did the things that she said that she did, she took the Carbolic Smokeball 3 times a day in accordance with the printed directions in the box. She had no contractual obligation to do that. She was never a party to a contract doing that. But it's only when she did those things and then she fell sick that she had performed her obligations under a contract. Bizarre to say falling sick is an obligation under a contract, because it's clearly not an obligation. You don't want to fall sick, right? But by falling sick, she had done all of those things, and that was the actions were her acceptance. That ripened into a contract where we only have one party who has anything left to do.